In a world constantly distracted by noise, speed, and surface-level seduction, there's a different path. One that doesn't shout, one that doesn't beg, one that influences, not through force, but through depth. That path is the Stoic path. Welcome to the everlasting Stoic, where we merge ancient wisdom with the challenges of modern relationships and self-mastery. If you're tired of empty tactics and crave a deeper power, the kind that moves people without chasing them, you're in the right place. This is not a place for gimmicks. It's not about manipulating others to get what you want. It's about becoming someone whose very presence shifts the dynamic. Someone who holds influence not because they crave it, but because they embody something rare. Clarity, detachment, depth. Today's long-form journey is titled, How to Influence Desire with Subtle Stoic Tactics. Not through games or manipulation, but through internal refinement. The kind of influence that isn't shouted, so take a breath. Let the world quiet down around you. If this is your kind of depth, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button to help us share this philosophy with more people. And above all, stay with me until the end, because every chapter builds on the last. Let's begin. 1. Understand the psychology of influence. Before we move into tactics or appearances, let's go deeper into the very architecture of influence itself. Because to truly shape desire, we must understand its roots. And at the heart of desire lies perception. Not logic, not persuasion. Perception. Most people chase influence like a child chases smoke. They think if they say the right words, wear the right clothes, or project the right image, they'll be desired. But Stoicism teaches us a deeper truth. Influence is not something you do, it is something you become. Desire begins in the mind of the other person, and that mind is a storm of beliefs, assumptions, insecurities, and emotional histories. If you try to control it directly, you will fail. But if you understand it, if you learn to move with it, and if you master yourself within that storm, then you become the lighthouse. You do not chase ships. Ships come to you. So how does one become that kind of person? The kind who influences desire not through loud declarations, but through silent gravity. First, understand that people desire what they believe is scarce, valuable, or self-completing. Think of this: when someone appears whole, calm, unshaken. When they seem untouched by the chaos that consumes everyone else, they become magnetic. Why? Because we all crave grounding, we all crave assurance. And when we see someone who doesn't need us, we start to wonder why. This is where Stoicism enters. The Stoic man or woman is not cold. They are not unfeeling, but they are unmoved by external noise. They don't seek validation. They don't ask for attention. Their silence says more than others shouting. They are not here to be liked. They are here to be true. Influence, then, begins in internal sovereignty. Ask yourself, do you control your emotions? Or do they control you? Do you shape your habits, or are you shaped by them? Because the person who cannot lead themselves can never truly influence others. Understand also the role of contrast. In a world of performative thirst, where people beg for likes, for attention, for validation, the one who holds himself with quiet self-assurance becomes almost mythic. We remember what is rare, and detachment in a sea of neediness is rare. But be warned, detachment is not aloofness. It is not pretending not to care. That too is a performance, and people sense performance. True Stoic influence comes from actually not needing, not pretending not to need. It comes from having built a life so whole that validation becomes unnecessary. Influence flows from abundance, not from void. When someone meets you, they don't consciously think this person has mastered themselves, but they feel it. In the calm tone of your voice, in the way you respond instead of react, in the way your gaze doesn't flinch. You are not scanning for approval. You are not trying to be seen. You are simply there, unshaken, complete, and people feel that. It unsettles them, intrigues them, magnetizes them. That is influence. Not in the form of control, but in the form of presence. True power is not imposed. It is recognized. Let's also talk about pacing. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you enter a room. Most people rush. They fill silences. They talk too fast. They apologize for existing. But the Stoic moves with time, not against it. Their slow pace says, I am not rushed because I am not chasing. I am not chasing because I already know who I am. This slowness, this self-assurance is hypnotic. It allows others to lean in. It creates tension. And in the realm of desire, tension is everything. Tension creates space for curiosity. Curiosity births attraction. Not just romantic, but psychological. People want to be around someone who doesn't need them, yet sees them clearly. That paradox of deep presence without emotional dependence is the root of subtle influence. Let me leave you with this thought before we move on. If you want to influence someone's desire, stop focusing on them. Focus instead on becoming the person that others naturally orbit. Stop chasing eyes. Become the sun. And here's a question worth reflecting on. Have you ever met someone who had this kind of quiet gravity? How did they carry themselves? What did they not say that spoke volumes? If you've ever witnessed or been that kind of presence, share your experience in the comments. Or if you're ready to step into this kind of influence, write this down below as a personal commitment. I do not chase. I refine. I become. We'll continue. The next chapter explores how detachment, not indifference, but intentional reframing, can reshape desire itself. 2. Reframe desire through detachment. Desire is a wild thing. It moves like fire, hungry, unpredictable, and easily manipulated by wind. Most people, without knowing it, throw logs onto that fire in others by appearing desperate, attached, and emotionally over-invested. And then they wonder why the flame dies out. But here's a principle every Stoic must grasp. If they want to influence desire at a fundamental level, desire grows in the absence of possession. And detachment is not the opposite of desire. It is the container that keeps desire alive. When you fully grasp this, you stop trying to get people. You begin to see that the more tightly you grip, the more quickly you push away. The more you try to possess, the more the mystery dissolves. The more you try to secure someone emotionally, the more they feel smothered. The Stoic doesn't eliminate desire. They reframe it. They don't fear wanting, but they understand it for what it is. An impulse that must be seen, observed, and redirected, not obeyed. So let's break it down. When someone desires you, or when you desire someone, what's actually happening? Beneath the surface, there's a projection. You see in that person something you believe will complete you. But once possession is gained, the mind says, I've acquired the thing. And the desire fades, unless there's something deeper holding it together. Now here's where Stoic tactics come into play. You do not make yourself more desirable by doing more. You make yourself more desirable by becoming ungraspable. Not confusing, not manipulative, but not entirely knowable. Detachment allows you to maintain that mystery. It means you're not constantly explaining yourself, justifying your time, or oversharing your emotions to be validated. You give space, you allow silence. You say no calmly, without guilt. You remain open, but not available to everyone at all times. This doesn't make you distant, it makes you disciplined. It says to the world, I value myself. I guard my energy. And if you want access to me, it must be earned. The person who is fully available is rarely valued. That's not cruel. It's psychology. We chase what we think we might lose. We appreciate what we know could walk away. Now, let's take this deeper. The Stoic reframes desire not just by withholding it, but by mastering it internally. This is the real secret. You cannot manipulate someone else's perception of you if your own desires are out of control. You must confront your own attachments. What are you afraid to lose? Who are you afraid to be without? Where are you seeking external validation because you haven't done the internal work? Until you sit with those questions and really sit with them, you will never understand detachment. Because detachment is not pretending not to care. It's standing in a storm and remaining unmoved. It's letting desire pass through you without it owning you. It's being able to walk away even when you want to stay, because your values, your dignity, your peace come first. This, to others, is terrifying. It's rare, and therefore, it's deeply attractive. When you master detachment, you don't lose connection. You enhance it. You create an emotional polarity. The other person begins to lean forward, to wonder, to feel drawn in. Not because you said the perfect thing, but because your energy isn't leaking out of need. Your silence speaks. Your absence carries weight. Your time has value. And this only works when it's real. If you fake detachment, people feel it. You'll appear cold or avoidant. But when you live it, when you've truly come to terms with impermanence, with rejection, with solitude, you carry a calm confidence that shifts everything. Let me leave you with this before we move on. Think of the last time someone gave you their full emotional dependence. How did it feel? Did it create desire, or did it create pressure? Now think of someone who was present, kind, but utterly unchained by your approval. Someone who didn't need you, but still saw you. That presence is power. And if you're ready to reclaim your power from the grip of need, drop this in the comments below as your personal affirmation. I walk with open hands. I desire, but I do not cling. What does detachment look like in your life right now? Share your struggle or your progress in the comments. Someone might need to read your story more than you think. Let's go deeper. Next, we'll talk about the role of presence and how it quietly shifts the power dynamic in any interaction. 3. Shift the power dynamic with presence. Power is rarely announced. In fact, the ones who talk the most about control are often the ones who have the least of it. True influence, the kind that reorients an entire room or shifts the energy of a relationship, comes from one thing: presence. Presence is not about being the loudest voice. It's about being fully there. It's about bringing all of yourself into the moment. Calmly, confidently, without flinching. Most people, even when physically present, are mentally scattered. They're waiting to speak. They're scanning the room. They're seeking approval. And as a result, they leak energy. The Stoic does not leak. The Stoic radiates because they are rooted in now, fully grounded. And when you meet someone who is truly present, It's almost unsettling. You feel seen. You feel held. Not physically, but energetically. This changes everything. In a dynamic. Why? Because presence is rare. And anything rare is powerful. Let's put it simply. The person who holds their frame, who listens deeply, who speaks slowly, who doesn't rush to fill the silence, that person immediately commands respect. They don't need to prove anything. Their energy proves it for them. But there's another layer here. Presence is a form of restraint. It is the conscious refusal to be pulled into another person's chaos, to be baited into insecurity, or to be drawn into emotional reactivity. When someone tries to provoke you, by withholding attention, by testing your boundaries, by challenging your confidence, the Stoic remains rooted. You don't match chaos. You invite the other to rise into your calm. This is the subtle reversal of power. In a world of emotional volatility, the person who can hold their ground without aggression becomes the leader in any interaction. They don't push, they don't chase. They simply are. And that being is enough to shift the entire presence also shows up in your body. The way you breathe, the way you hold eye contact, the way you walk into a room without needing to dominate it. You don't demand attention, but you receive it. Why? Because you're not fractured. You're whole, and wholeness draws the eye. Now let's make something very clear. Presence is not performance. You can't fake it. You can't act calm. You either are or you aren't. This is why internal work is so essential. Meditation, reflection, solitude, journaling. These aren't hobbies. They're weapons. They build the kind of internal landscape that allows you to stand still in the fire. And when someone meets you, even for the first time, they will feel that. They may not be able to articulate it, but they'll lean in, wondering why they feel so grounded in your presence, why their chaos begins to quiet when they're around you. This doesn't just influence romantic desire. It influences everything. Job interviews, friendships, leadership. Presence is your greatest currency. It tells the world, I am not waiting to be chosen. I am choosing myself. Now pause and ask yourself, how often are you truly present? How often are you in the room, rather than lost in thought, planning what to say next, or seeking affirmation? The Stoic knows this truth. Wherever you are, be there fully, because that alone is power. Take a moment now. If you've ever experienced someone with this level of presence, someone who didn't need to prove anything but instantly shifted the room, share what you noticed about them in the comments. And if you're committed to cultivating that kind of power, write this below. My presence is my power. I stand rooted in stillness. We're just getting started. In the next chapter, we'll explore the seductive strength of ambiguity and how it stirs interest in ways certainty never can. 4. Leverage ambiguity to stir interest. In a world addicted to clarity, ambiguity is a lost art. Everyone wants labels, definitions, answers. What are we? What do you mean? Where is this going? The moment something uncertain arises, people rush to kill the tension with explanation. But here's a Stoic truth the modern world forgot. Mystery sustains desire. Certainty kills it. When everything is revealed, when every move is predictable, when every emotion is disclosed instantly, desire dries up. Why? Because the mind loses its space to roam. There's no depth to explore, no enigma to unravel. It becomes safe. And safety, while important in love, is not what fuels attraction. Ambiguity, intentional, graceful ambiguity, creates tension. It gives the other person room to wonder, to imagine, to lean in closer in search of meaning. This is not manipulation. This is the natural play of polarity. The ancient Greeks knew this in art, in drama, in conversation. What you leave unsaid is often more powerful than what you say. The Stoic, grounded in internal clarity, can afford to be externally ambiguous. They don't need to rush to explain themselves. They don't constantly reveal their emotional state. They do not give away their entire story in the first 5 minutes. They let things breathe, and this breathing space is where interest grows. Let's break this down further. Ambiguity doesn't mean being evasive or deceptive. It means allowing the other person to experience layers. You show just enough of your mind, your intentions, your emotions to stir curiosity, to open a door, but you never force them to walk through it. The modern mind, especially in dating, has been trained to seek immediate reassurance. People want to know they're liked, wanted, safe, and so they disclose everything. Overshare, over-explain. But what they really do is extinguish the subtle fire. The Stoic, however, understands that intimacy is earned, not dumped. Vulnerability is sacred, not a weapon of early bonding. They do not use their pain as bait. They are selective. They are precise, and they understand that a little mystery allows others to meet them halfway. Not in games, but in grace. There is a kind of strength in saying less, in not reacting immediately, in not declaring every feeling the moment it arises. You allow the other person to feel into the space, to sit in silence, to wonder. And that wondering is not confusion, it is invitation. Ambiguity also forces people to project. They fill in the gaps with their own imagination. If you carry yourself with calm confidence, if your words are sparse but meaningful, people will create stories about you, and often those stories are more powerful than anything you could have said yourself. But remember, ambiguity only works when it rests on a foundation of authentic presence. If you're unclear because you're anxious or hiding, people feel that. But if you're unclear because you're centered, because you choose to reveal yourself slowly, then ambiguity becomes magnetic. Let's also mention the art of not answering everything. The Stoic understands the difference between honesty and over-disclosure. When someone asks a question, not every answer must be immediate, detailed, or even verbal. Sometimes a look is enough. A pause. A smile. A change of subject. These subtle moves say, I do not owe you everything. You must earn deeper access. Ambiguity also maintains your autonomy. When you do not label everything, you retain the power to grow, to shift, to evolve without being pinned into someone else's frame. You stay fluid, and fluidity is attractive because it reflects someone who is still discovering themselves and invites others to join the journey rather than assume the ending. If this resonates, and you're beginning to see how restraint can stir more desire than performance, I have a simple challenge for you. In the comments, share one time when not giving everything away made you more powerful. Or commit to practicing this principle by writing, I leave space. Mystery is my ally. You'd be surprised how much more magnetic you become when you stop trying to prove your worth. Let's keep moving. In the next chapter, we'll explore a powerful yet often misunderstood principle, mirroring confidence instead of need, because you attract what you reflect. 5. Mirror confidence, not need. Every interaction is a mirror. Whether romantic, professional, or casual, the energy you project gets reflected back to you. And here's the harsh truth. If you project neediness, you attract distance. If you project emptiness, you attract confusion. But if you project calm, grounded confidence, you invite curiosity, respect, and often desire. The mistake most people make, especially in relationships, is that they seek validation instead of connection. They walk into a room trying to be liked, instead of walking in as if they already are. Let's start here. Need is loud. Confidence is silent. You don't need to tell people how great you are. You don't need to perform your strength. You don't need to ask, "Do you like me?" with every glance, every text, every over-explained thought. These are the cries of someone who has not yet realized that confidence is not something you show. It's something you radiate. Stoicism teaches us that true confidence begins with self-ownership. You accept your flaws without shame. You own your virtues without arrogance. You don't seek constant feedback because you already live in alignment with your values. You know who you are, not in a prideful way, but in a quiet, unshakable one. Now let's talk about what it means to mirror confidence. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about recognizing that every time you engage with someone, you set a tone. If they're anxious and you match that anxiety, the dynamic spirals. But if you stay grounded, you become the emotional anchor in the room. People begin to calibrate to you. This mirroring principle is subtle but profound. When someone sees you calm under pressure, they start to feel safe. When they see you not flinching at silence, they start to trust your stillness. When you don't seek approval, they start to wonder what makes you so self-sufficient. And here's where it gets interesting. When you reflect confidence, not need, you allow others to rise. You invite them into a space where they don't have to perform either. They relax, they open, they become themselves around you. Because your stillness gives them permission to shed their masks. This is a gift. And most people unconsciously mirror need. They overtext, overtalk, overjustify, all to make sure they're not abandoned. But in doing so, they train the other person to see them as insecure, as emotionally high maintenance, as unstable, and attraction fades. The Stoic does not chase. He does not overshare. He does not emotionally dump. He reflects stability. And in doing so, he becomes irresistible. Not because he's trying, but because he's centered. But this takes practice. You must first catch yourself in the act. Every time you seek validation, pause, ask, am I sharing from connection or fear? Every time you want to fix someone's silence, ask, do I need this or am I okay without it? Mirroring confidence also means having boundaries. You don't bend just to keep someone. You don't laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You don't agree to plans that drain you. You respond, not react. You stand tall, especially when it's easier to shrink. Let me give you something to apply immediately. The next time you're in a conversation, try this. Match the tone, but elevate the energy. If someone is nervous, don't dive into their panic. Slow your speech, hold eye contact, breathe. Let them feel your presence. You'll notice something incredible. They begin to relax. They rise to your level. Confidence is not about being the loudest. It's about being the one who doesn't move unless it's intentional. The one who holds the frame without gripping it. Let me ask you this and reflect honestly in your recent interactions. Have you been mirroring confidence or need? If you're ready to change that, write this in the comments. I reflect what I value. I project peace. And if you've experienced someone whose calm, grounded energy changed the way you felt about yourself, tell us. Your story might show someone what's possible when we stop performing and start embodying strength. Next up, we'll dive into the power of silence and intention. Sometimes the most influential thing you can do is say nothing at all. 6. Speak less, mean more. We live in a time of compulsive speech. Everyone has something to say, all the time. Social media has trained us to react instantly, to fill silence with opinion, to justify, to explain, to broadcast every thought the moment it appears. But amidst all this noise, there is one thing that cuts deeper than words: silence combined with meaning. The Stoic understands this intimately. Speech is not about quantity, it's about weight. To influence desire, to hold power in any interaction, you must stop trying to win through more words. Influence is not found in how much you say, but in the way you hold your words until they truly matter. Let's start with the principle. The more you speak, the more you dilute your presence. Think about this. If someone is always talking, always narrating, reacting, filling in every silence, they become background noise. Their words lose gravity. But when someone is selective, when they speak with intent, when each sentence feels chosen rather than blurted suddenly, others lean in, they listen. Why? Because rarity commands attention. The Stoic speaks when he means something. Not to entertain, not to impress, not to avoid silence, but to direct energy precisely. He uses words like a blade, not to wound, but to cut through illusion. Let's be clear. Speaking less doesn't mean withdrawing from conversation. It means becoming strategic. You don't withhold to manipulate. You withhold to clarify. You filter what needs to be said from what is simply noise. This becomes even more important in moments of tension or desire. When you're emotionally triggered, the urge to speak, to defend, to explain, to get clarity is immense. But the Stoic pauses, breathes, observes, because he knows impulsive speech is almost always regretted. Here's the truth. When you don't say everything you think, people begin to wonder what you're thinking. That's power. When you don't give your opinion on everything, your opinion starts to matter more. When you don't react with words to every slight, your silence becomes a signal of strength. Now consider this in the context of relationships and desire. Neediness often hides in words. Over-texting, over-clarifying, explaining your worth, justifying your absence. Asking questions not out of curiosity, but out of fear. These forms of speech don't build attraction. They erode it. But when you pull back, when you allow the other person to come toward you, when you let silence stretch without panic, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer seeking reassurance. You are radiating stability. The Stoic knows, not everything requires a response. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every silence needs to be filled. This isn't coldness, it's control. It's the recognition that your energy is sacred, and your words, when chosen with discipline, become sacred too. Let me offer a practice for you. In your next conversation, resist the urge to fill every pause. Allow silence to speak for you. Let your expressions, your posture, your presence do some of the talking. Observe how others respond. You may find that they become more attentive, more respectful, even more intrigued, because something about you feels different. When your words carry weight, people remember them. But to speak with weight, you must first learn the art of restraint. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced the power of someone who said very little but whose words stayed with you? Share that moment in the comments. Or if you're committing to speaking with more meaning and less noise, Write this. I speak with purpose. My silence is part of my voice. Next, we'll discuss how to draw attention not with volume but with presence. How to command a room without raising your voice, demanding praise, or fighting for status. 7. Command attention without demanding it. True power doesn't clamor for the spotlight. It doesn't scream to be noticed. It simply is, and because of that, it cannot be ignored. This is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in influence and desire. People think they must demand attention to receive it. But the Stoic knows otherwise. To command attention, you must become someone worthy of it, whether or not it is given. Let's reframe the whole idea of attention. Attention is not something you earn by performing. It is something you naturally attract when you embody depth, presence, and self-possession. Most people are chasing attention like it's oxygen. They post, they brag, they interrupt, they exaggerate. But here's the paradox. The more you chase attention, the less it wants you. Why? Because people sense when someone is seeking approval, and approval-seeking energy repels. It says, I need you to see me in order to feel whole. It places the power outside of yourself. But when you stop trying to be seen, and instead focus on simply being someone of substance, attention starts to come without you even noticing. You walk into a room and say nothing, and yet people notice. You sit in stillness, and others feel it. You don't compete, and somehow you start to lead. This is the essence of Stoic charisma, quiet magnetism. You don't pull attention toward you. You anchor it. How do you build this? Start with your energy field. I'm not talking about mysticism. I'm talking about how you carry yourself, your posture, your stillness, your gaze. The energy behind your movement. Is it frantic or intentional? Are you trying to prove something? Or are you grounded in your own worth? The Stoic cultivates containment. This means you don't spill energy. You don't overshare. You don't broadcast insecurity. You don't fidget, ramble, or force jokes. You hold yourself. You vow slowly. You make deliberate choices. You are unshaken by who enters the room. Next, you build reputation without performance. This means you do excellent work when no one is watching. You keep your word. You walk away from what insults your soul. You become reliable, consistent, centered, and over time, people begin to notice, not because you advertised yourself, but because they felt your integrity. Let's also talk about emotional economy. When you give your emotional attention to everyone, constantly, you become cheap. The Stoic chooses carefully who receives his time, his energy, his affection. This doesn't make him cold. It makes him valuable. The same way gold is precious, because it is rare. Your attention becomes meaningful when it is not thrown at every passing face. And here's the key. When you stop demanding attention, you stop fearing its absence. You are no longer controlled by who looks at you, who texts you, who praises you. You're not performing for validation. You're walking your path. And in doing so, others can feel the subtle gravity of your presence. Commanding attention also means you are able to take up space, not physically, necessarily, but energetically. You are not shrinking. You are not apologizing for your presence. You exist with certainty. You sit like someone who belongs. You speak like someone who means it. You listen like someone who respects themselves. And when you combine that with stillness, with restraint, with clarity, you become someone who doesn't have to ask for attention. People naturally give it to you. They want to, because there's something rare about you, something most have never seen before. Let me leave you with this thought. You will never need to demand attention once you become someone who is impossible to ignore. If you're on that path, if you're cultivating that presence, share what you've noticed about your own energy in the comments. Or if you're committing now to stop performing and start embodying, write this: I do not demand attention. I attract it by becoming. The chase is almost over. In the next chapter, we will redefine the chase itself. How the Stoic reframes pursuit, attraction, and longing in a world obsessed with winning others over. 8. Redefine the chase. The idea of the chase has been romanticized, weaponized, and ultimately misunderstood. Movies, culture, and even mainstream dating advice all tell us, chase what you want. Go after them. Make them see your worth. Be persistent. Don't give up. But the Stoic sees through the illusion. To chase is to imply lack. To pursue relentlessly is to admit that what you want controls you. Let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with desire. There's nothing wrong with initiative, with expressing interest, with choosing someone. But when that desire becomes an anxious pursuit, when your sense of fulfillment becomes tethered to their response, you've already lost yourself in the process. The Stoic reframes the chase entirely. He does not chase. He discerns. He does not pursue. He invites. He does not lose himself in the wanting of another. He deepens himself so that the right people are drawn in without force. Let's strip this down. The typical chase is fueled by insecurity. One person is emotionally unavailable or simply indifferent, and the other chases to prove their worth. They interpret that resistance as mystery, that aloofness as value. They begin performing, adjusting, compromising, not because it's noble, but because they're desperate to be chosen. The Stoic never plays that game. He doesn't chase because he doesn't need to be chosen to validate his existence. He has already chosen himself. His life is already full. He has cultivated solitude. He has stared down loneliness and found peace in its shadow. And so when he desires someone, he expresses it, but does not attach his identity to their response. He makes his move, but he does not follow endlessly. If the interest is not mutual, he does not internalize rejection. He simply steps back without bitterness, without theatrics, because his sense of value remains intact. This is the art of dignified pursuit. When interest is mutual, the Stoic nurtures it with care. He listens, he observes, he shows up fully. But he never abandons his values to maintain attraction. He never contorts his soul to keep someone entertained. He is not running to win. They are walking together. Now here's the secret. When you stop chasing, you become the one worth chasing. Why? Because grounded presence is more rare than charm. Because wholeness is more seductive than hunger. Because people are tired of being pursued by hollow desire. Most people don't want to be chased. They want to feel chosen, not desperately, but wisely. Not by someone who needs them to feel whole, but by someone who is already whole and still chooses them. That's powerful. And that's why the Stoic does not win through effort. He wins through alignment. He attracts what mirrors his peace. He partners only with those who meet him in stillness, not in chaos. And if they leave, he lets them go. No begging, no convincing, no dramatic pleas, because he knows nothing forced is ever sustainable. And anything that costs you your peace is too expensive. no matter how beautiful it may appear. So the next time you find yourself chasing, pause. Ask, am I honoring myself in this pursuit, or am I abandoning myself to avoid rejection? The next time someone pulls away, observe, don't react. Let them. You do not lose what is truly aligned with your energy. You only lose what was never meant to stay. And if you've felt this shift, if you've learned to stop chasing and instead commit to the path below by commenting, I do not chase. I align, I invite, I walk in peace. Or share your story. What made you stop the chase? What did you learn when you let go? Your experience might unlock someone else's freedom. Now let's land this ship together. Conclusion. We've come full circle. In a world obsessed with tactics, games, and external validation, you've just walked through a different path, a deeper one. The path of subtle Stoic influence, not through manipulation, not through volume, but through internal mastery. You've learned to understand the psychology of influence at its core, to reframe desire, not as something to chase, but something to observe and master. To shift the power dynamic with calm, grounded presence. To use ambiguity, not to confuse, but to invite curiosity. To reflect confidence, not need, and create polarity through stillness. To speak less but mean every word, so that your voice carries true weight. To command attention not by demanding it, but by becoming someone who naturally holds it. And finally, to redefine the chase, not as a desperate run toward validation, but as a centered walk toward mutual alignment. This is the path of the everlasting Stoic. And it's not a tactic you try for a week. It's a lifestyle, a way of being, a refinement of your inner world that inevitably shapes how the world responds to you. You will find that as you embody these principles, you attract people who no longer need to be chased. You draw in those who are also walking with intention, with presence, with self-awareness. You don't just become influential in love. You become influential in every room you enter because you've done the work to influence yourself first.
If this message spoke to you, if this resonated with something deep inside you, then I invite you now to subscribe to the Everlasting Stoic. Hit the like button to help us spread this calm revolution. And more importantly, share this with someone who needs to hear it.
And remember, influence begins not when others see you, but when you no longer need to be seen. Until next time, walk with stillness, speak with weight, and become the presence that others remember long after you've left the room.